Day 2 here at Radio Row as a part of WFUV Sports here for Super Bowl 58 this weekend. One-on-one, New York's longest running sports call-in show, live on YouTube until 5 p.m. on the East Coast. I'm Brian Raybacks. Across the table from me is Bridge Gotham. Bridge, we got through day 1, but the week's just getting started. We're right in it, and now we're at day 2. How are we feeling back at Radio Row for another day?
The party's just getting started, Brian. I mean, you know, they say about Vegas, what happens here stays here, and it's been an awesome couple of days. Day 1, we were here at Radio Row. You can catch that show on our YouTube page at WFUV Sports if you missed anything. Had some great interviews in there. We have plenty more coming up today. This morning we heard from the Kansas City Chiefs up at their team hotel. Yesterday we did Chiefs and Niners. Niners later today. So as you can tell, pretty busy schedule, but busy in a really good way. And this has just been such an awesome experience.
It really has. And we did the show yesterday, and then afterwards we got to go to the Niners for their media day, and we'll be back there later this afternoon. But for the 49ers, a lot of it that we were taking from it was a lot about Brock Purdy, and something that we were talking about off the air was just how kind of calm and reserved he kind of is to this whole thing. Like Patrick Mahomes, he's given a lot of himself trying to, you know, keep things loose. But Brock Purdy, this is his first Super Bowl, so this is the first time he's really dealt with the madness of it all, like the whole media that surrounds it and everything. He's handling it as best he can, but, you know, first Super Bowl, it's got to be creeping in his mind a little bit, and we kind of saw that yesterday.
Yeah, I think, you know, he's taking it very seriously in the best way possible.
Right.
You know, I mentioned how awesome Radio Row is. Joe Montana, just about 10 feet behind you right now, Brian, interviewing at AP. So, you know, those are just the kind of names you see walking around here, and I mentioned him because we're talking about the 49ers and, you know, legends that used to play there, and you talk about the Niners were so great in the late 80s and early 90s and have been good in our lifetime, but have not won a Super Bowl in our lifetime, Brian, have gotten there twice, fell short both times. Last time was to the Kansas City Chiefs. And, of course, last time quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo no longer with the team. It is Brock Purdy. It is year 2. They came so close in year 1. An injury in the NFC Championship game might have been the difference in that one last year. But this year they've made it all the way. And, yeah, you talk about a guy who looks seriously composed up there at the podium. And not that Mahomes necessarily wasn't, but he was a bit more loose. He'd been there before, was kind of cracking a few jokes. Purdy,
that's something you get from 4 years of experience.
That's the experience you get. You get a little bit more comfortable. It's like riding a bike, right? And, you know, Purdy's just taking off the training wheels. He's kind of figuring out how it all goes. And, you know, he's certainly proven himself that he can play at a high level because his team is in the Super Bowl, has all the great weapons around him. And you can tell he's focused. He's excited to be here. But it almost feels like to me, like, he would play the game today if he could. Like, he looks so laser focused. He's locked in. Like, let's just get the ball rolling.
Well, they were talking a little bit about that, like, hey, how do you feel with 2 weeks off?
Oh, yeah,
after
Coach
the
Shanahan,
game?
right?
Coach Shanahan was like, oh, thank God.
He gave the opposite answer.
Essentially, he was like, I couldn't imagine if we had to deal with everything and then get – because there's so much pressure on each team. But the 49ers, they've been there before, but they've just been working continuously over the last 4 years or so now to get back there. And they have a chance to right the wrong of the game 4 years ago against the Chiefs in Miami, which ended up coming up short. And one of my favorite things from yesterday, talking to, you know, the 49ers players and getting their perspective, we got to see Nick Zakelj, which was former Fordham alumni, former Ram, and it was just great talking to him, and great to hear that he's still hyping up Fordham a lot, because when we walked in the back room and people saw our shirts, they were saying, oh, hey, you guys are from Fordham.
He's over there.
It's great that he still holds a lot of pride and still talks a lot about his experience at Fordham, and he had a great career as part of that Fordham football team.
I mean, a great career, I'd say, would even be an understatement. I mean, there's a reason he got drafted, and, you know, Fordham being an FCS program, you know, getting it, you know, players to the NFL is one thing, but to be selected in the NFL draft on day 3, I mean, that is an awesome, awesome experience. I believe Nick went in the 6th round. The Niners picked him up a couple years ago. This is, you know, Nick, it's just such a cool story. You talked about we were walking over to him, and we were, you know, I think he saw our Fordham stuff, but as soon as we, like, said, you know, WFV Fordham, the way his eyes lit up, the way he jumped out of his seat to shake our hands and said, let's get a picture.
He was really
excited. Let's do an interview.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he was so happy, and, you know, I think we made his day. He made ours, certainly, and made our week, I would say. And, you know, it proves, you know, the Fordham connection, it goes very deep. It started with Vince Lombardi, the namesake of the Super Bowl trophy, of course, you know, Fordham alum, part of the 7 blocks of granite back in the 1940s, all the way to guys that are still in the league, whether it be Chase Edmonds or Nick Zakelj. And it's Cool to be able to talk to him. That was certainly the highlight. And I think back to what we were talking about with Coach Shanahan. It's cool because you hear from Coach Reed and Coach Shanahan, and you kind of see, the different ways that they kind of approach not just coaching, but the way that they handle the press, and it's kind of cool. Coach Reed, very chill, and I like Coach Shanahan, too, to an extent, was kind of chilled out, but I liked, when somebody asked him, the question that you brought up, Brian, was, do you like the 2 weeks? And I think the first thing he said was he joked, he's like, you never know how many friends or how many people like you until that Monday after the NFC Championship game when they all want tickets to the Super Bowl. And I think everyone got a good laugh out of that. Even, guys that are at the top of their game, guys that are coaching, like, they're still human. They still have the same problems we do is, hey, I got an uncle. He wants to go to the Super Bowl, right? These are friends and family.
Well, we have a loaded day here at Radio Row. Day 2 here. We'll take a quick break. We have an interview coming up next, but you don't want to go anywhere. You're listening to One-on-One, New York's longest-running sports call-in show.
What's up, everyone? I'm Julia Moss, one of the hosts of WFUV's women's sports podcast, All In. Join us each week as we break down everything from the WNBA, women's collegiate sports, the NWSL, and so much more. We're also joined by recurring hosts including Maddie Bamonte, Taylor Masetta, Sam Bohr, and Annabelle Watson. All In is a production of WFUV Sports. Welcome back to One-on-One live from Las Vegas at Radio Row. We are joined by an incredibly special guest, John Jaskrimski, JJ, contributor at SNY, also works with the Ringer New York Gambling. John, how has it been? I mean, we just mentioned Stephen A. Smith you just got off the interview with. How was that?
Fantastic. First of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be on WFUV. My dad is an avid WFUV listener and is a old school classic rock guy, so it comes full circle. You guys have a great program, great radio station, whole deal. It's been a great week. Listen, you're out in Las Vegas. You tell me I'm out in Las Vegas hanging, working for a few days, having Stephen A. Smith, Saquon Barkley. We had a great week, meeting a whole lot of people. It's been awesome. Fantastic across the board.
Awesome.
Fresh off your conversation with Stephen A., just how was that? Is he the same as he gives off on TV?
Yes, 100%. 100%. And, he's venting about his New York Knicks. We're going through the whole diatribe there. Happy about the day, though, and a couple of nice pieces complement the rotation. So, yeah, he lived up to the billing. I was very curious to see what I was getting myself into, and I think he delivered.
Obviously, you cover all sports with SNY, do Sports Night, among other shows. The Chiefs making it to the Super Bowl, I feel like, wasn't the most predictable thing. In your opinion, at what point did you feel like the Chiefs, had a shot at making it this far?
Honestly, once they won their first playoff game.
Gotcha.
You're right. Midway through the year, it fell off with Kansas City. Their offense is not the same. They're losing games in the middle of the year. You wondered, hey, is the Taylor Swift thing maybe a distraction, whatever the case may be. They figured it out. It's like the calendar turned to the month of January. They flipped the switch and all of a sudden transformed. Then, boom, they're the Chiefs. And it's Patrick Mahomes and it's Andy Reid. And, they're in the AFC Championship game, 6 years in a row? This is their fourth Super Bowl in 6 years. They know how to win.
I mean, I'm curious because this is something we were talking about yesterday with Mahomes' trajectory. So we're looking at 6 AFC Championship games in 6 years. Like you said, he has a chance to win his third Super Bowl in the last 5 years. So when you talk about the success that he's had initially. Is it too early to put him in Brady conversations? Because Brady also had a lot of this success early on, and Mahomes seems to be leading similar to path like that. Is it too early to bring up that conversation?
Well, he's clearly on his way. There's no getting around that. Now, I don't like the all-time narratives and conversations when a guy still has a decade plus of his NFL career. Like, this will be sorted out. It's fun for all of us to kind of bring up here on Radio Row as we're getting ready for the Super Bowl. Oh, can Mahomes be better than Brady? The answer to that question is yes. There's a chance he could win more than Tom Brady, and we're looking back on his career and saying yes. But I also like that narrative to play out over time. Listen, Mahomes is not going anywhere. And that's the scary thing. If you're a fan of a team in the AFC, like I am, my Dolphins, good team, got smoked by the Chiefs in the playoffs. The Jets have been in the playoffs 13 years. You get in the playoffs, who's staring you in the face? It's Mahomes, and then the guys who haven't won that have had a lot of regular season success. Josh Allen, 4 straight division titles. Lamar Jackson, 2 MVPs. Joe Burrow, who's beaten Patrick Mahomes in a playoff game. Like, that's the gauntlet that you're going through. But as far as, like, the all-time conversation, listen, Mahomes already an all-time great. He could stop playing football tomorrow. He could say, hey, I am done. My career is over. He's a Hall of Famer. That's it. He's a Hall of Famer. That all-time, do I think he will end up going down as either the best or the second-best quarterback I've ever seen in my lifetime? Yes. Yes.
Well, moving over to the 49ers, there's another narrative among quarterbacks, and specifically with Brock Purdy, whether he's a system quarterback or an MVP candidate. It's crazy that there's really no middle ground there, that it's either he's a product of the system or he's one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I want to hear your opinion. Where do you stand in that conversation?
So, listen, Brock Purdy does exactly what Kyle Shanahan wants him to do.
Right.
He's the perfect quarterback for his system. He gets the ball out quick. He's got some spunk. He's mobile. He's perfect for them. And guess what? By drafting him where they did, they now have the ability to go and say, okay, we're going to go load up our roster. We can go and pay Christian McCaffrey a lot of money. We can go and pay Trent Williams a lot of money. We can go and load up our defense because we hit on a quarterback with the last pick in the NFL draft. Whether he's a system guy or not, hey, they were down the fourth quarter against Detroit. They came back and won.
Yep.
They were down the fourth quarter against Green Bay. They came back and won. Ain't broke, don't fix it. It's working.
And when you look at, the NFL and the state of it, I mean, you're a New York guy, so we got to bring up the Jets and just how that season played out and how, everything just fell apart right when Aaron Rodgers went down. So just what do you make of their future in terms of next year immediately? Do you see them just running it back and being what they were supposed to be this year with Rodgers?
So they're going to run it back. I have Marcus Spears on from ESPN, and he's a lot more, bullish on the Jets than I am. I'm going to be honest. I don't believe in a GM. I think the head coach is terrible. Legitimately terrible. I mean, his teams are never prepared to play. They stink in the first quarter. They don't make adjustments as the game goes along. But they got a mulligan. They basically the equivalent of what I'm going to be in 2 hours on the golf course. They're getting to do it again on the first hole because Aaron Rodgers went down. So you want to tell me, all right, Aaron Rodgers plays his better quarterback play than what they have. Sure. But they still need a second receiver. Their offensive line still stinks. The defense is good. It's not great. It's not as good as they make it out to be. And they're in a loaded conference. Can you tell me the Jets are a playoff team next year and I'd buy it? Yeah. I don't think that's outrageous. You tell me we're sitting here next year and the Jets are playing in the game? No chance. No, I mean, let's be real. Are the Jets going to be able to have a team that's capable of going and winning a Super Bowl next year? I find that hard to believe.
They haven't shown that in the last 60 years or so.
Well, they've had some moments. Listen, 2009, 2010, they were close. 98, they were very close. Those are AFC Championship game runs. This team, though, hasn't been in the playoffs. If you guys don't mind me, how old are you guys?
I am 21
So, all
years
right,
old.
so you guys are in the early 20s.
Yes.
You guys have not seen the Jets in the playoffs since you were 8 or 9 years old,
I
give or
vaguely
take.
remember it.
That's
yeah,
what I mean.
It's kind of parked in the back.
That's what I mean. And you guys probably weren't even alive when the Dolphins won their last playoff game, which is a story for a different day.
Listen,
I was alive in 03.
But they didn't win it in 2001.
01.
Yeah.
Listen, I'm a Titans fan, so I've never actually seen my team win they went to the Super Bowl when I was I don't know,
That was in
not even a
2000,
year.
1999.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But, JJ, I have one more question
Sure.
for you. And again, thank you so much for
Of
taking
course.
the time. Zooming out of the NFL a little bit, there's a lot of people watching right now who are Fordham students, FUV students. if you had just one piece of advice for people who want to get into the sports media industry, what would that be?
Work really hard and be very versatile. That's what I tell a lot of young students and a lot of young broadcasters right now, because I even think about my career. When I was in your position, radio was all I wanted to do. Now, also, it was 2005, it's a totally different stratosphere in the world in broadcasting where, there's a lot more opportunities. The digital age has changed a whole lot of things. But I think the idea of being able to do a lot of different stuff. Hey, you're good on social media. Hey, you know how to run a show. Hey, you know how to. I basically taught myself. I didn't do any TV in college. I basically went on TV. Wow. I said, I know my stuff. I'm going to get good at doing TV. And that's basically what I did. You work at it. But I think the idea of having a lot of different variables, opportunities, combining them into one, it's going to make you the best broadcaster you can be.
Well, JJ, thank you once again. We will be right
back.
Who
are you guys picking in the game, by the way?
That's a great question.
Chiefs.
Hey, you and everybody else. I'm on the Niners. Just saying.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Very cool.
All right. Thank you again. We will be right back with another interview with Alexander Madison. Stay tuned. We will be right back.
What's going on, guys? I'm Jack Warner, one of your New York Rangers beat reporters for the 2023-2024 NHL season. I'll have you covered all season long as New York looks to bring a Stanley Cup back to the Big Apple in Peter Laviolette's first season as head coach. Follow me on Twitter at Jack_Warner23 for live game updates, post-game media availability, and all things Blue Shirts.
Welcome back to Super Bowl Radio Row. I'm Chris Persianen here alongside Bridge Gotham for WFUV Sports, Fordham University's voice, and we're really honored to be joined by Alexander Madison, running back, the Minnesota Vikings. It's so great to have you here and talk to you on Super Bowl week. Before we even get into it, what's it been like being here at Radio Row, making the rounds?
It's been awesome. Love being here, seeing a lot of familiar faces, a lot of superstar power out here. Just getting to walk around and shake some hands and talk to some guys and get to meet people like you who are hungry to just do this, and the opportunity to do this is big. So it's really a blessing for me to be able to be a part of and be sitting down here.
Super Bowl, a lot of opportunity, lots of players that can make a name for themselves on and off the field. Talk to us a little bit about what brings you here today to Radio Row.
Yeah, so just have an opportunity. It's a blessing to be here and be able to sit down and represent my brand, I Am Gifted, in partnership with LVIII, amazing brand, an amazing partnership that we have there. And just continue to spread the message that everyone was born with a gift, and you just have to find it, embrace it, and use it to shed light in this world. And a lot of our efforts go towards mental health awareness, providing resources and information about positive mental health practices and suicide prevention.
Fantastic.
Appreciate
Awesome.
it.
But talk to me a little bit about this season. You had such a big role with the Vikings as the starter, Dalvin Cook. You know, you had some time learning from behind him. You know, what are some things you learned from him? And then this year, obviously, you know, with the Vikings losing Kirk in the middle of the year. So talk to me about how you sort of navigated the different ups and downs of sort of a bit of a chaotic season.
It was hard. It was definitely one of those seasons that you had to dig deep and go back to the drawing board multiple times. But yeah, if there was one thing that I pulled from that Dalvin taught me and that I learned from him was that be that little kid, be that 6-year-old kid that fell in love with the game and have fun. Through it all, that's what it's about. It's about having fun and living the dream. So I was trying to do the best I could in situations where, you know, things are going wrong and it's a roller coaster of a season, but you go back to the drawing board and you understand what is the reason that you started doing this in the beginning, and you start to feel that and start to play with that passion, play with that that love, and things start to fall back into place and you start to feel better, start to play better. So I'm just trying to go into this off season and to this next season with that mentality.
Alex, you shared the backfield a little bit this year with Ty Chandler, and I feel like y'all kind of fit together like yin and yang really well. What is it about you guys as a pairing that works so well?
I would have to say just his hunger. He's hungry to just play. The fact that he wants to be one of those kids on the field having fun, playing, doing it for his brothers and giving it his all is one of those things that I was able to see in the way that he played. And yeah, we were just able to click. He's my locker buddy. Me and him were on the back row together by ourselves until, you know, a couple guys popped back there. Anthony Barr when he came and joined us, but Miles Gaskin's back there with us now. But yeah, really for a while it was just me and him back there, and we were able to bond, but able to build that relationship. And I'm excited for this year coming up.
One last quick question for you, and it's one that you know you may have to think about it, you may not, you may just know. Is there a mindset you have, or whether it's a phrase or just a thought, like before you get the ball, you know you're about to rush it? Is there something you tell yourself before every rush? Or what is the mindset if not?
I'm trying to PG-13 it. But yeah, it's one of those things sometimes that just like they can't mess with you. You have to have the mindset somehow that to understand that, you know, you're one of the baddest dudes on that field, and you have to lead with that. So sometimes I'll be sitting in my stands and I'll just look across and just, you know, mental middle finger to whoever else is on the other side of the ball and rock out. Yeah.
Love it. Well, Alexander Madison here with I Am Gifted. Thank you so much for taking the time and joining us. It was a pleasure talking to you and meeting you.
Thank you very much for the
today.
time.
It was all really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. Stay tuned with us here on Radio Row from Las Vegas, Nevada. We'll have you covered all day and tomorrow. Don't miss a beat.
Hey guys, it's Nick Palmer, your New York Islanders beat reporter for the 2023-2024 NHL season. Tune into my Twitter at NickPalmer55 for live game updates in addition to pre- and post-game analysis. To get updates on all things Isles, follow me as the Blue and Orange try to bring another Stanley Cup championship to Long Island.
Welcome back to Radio Row here in Las Vegas. I'm Bridge Gotham, joined alongside Chris Persianen, and we are delighted to be joined by Owen Delancey, CEO of Fanfare Signatures, and we're very excited to have you on, Owen. How you doing today?
Yeah, good. Very good. Thank you.
So first want to just ask you, we're very interested in some of the work you do. We have heard like the parallels of kind of what Cameo is and how you're sort of taking an autograph approach to that. Can you tell us a little bit about what you guys do?
Yeah, so I usually start with the origin story. Basically, I grew up in Los Angeles in the film industry. My dad was an actor. He's Q on Star Trek. And so I grew up in the autograph memorabilia circuit.
That's awesome.
And during the pandemic, essentially everything kind of shut down, right? And so he was getting a flood of requests being like, oh, I need a signature. I wanted you to sign something. And we were writing back just saying, sorry, we'll have to wait and find out, right? I and my partner had a business already doing art, manufacturing, in-house design, printing. And I thought about it. I went, actually, you know what, Dad? I think I can maybe figure out a way to make this work. So we sent them very simple tools that we use, some of the design tools we use, styluses, tablet that we use to draw. Put up a simple little website and started taking requests from his fans, and it went spectacularly.
Oh, that's awesome.
And so we expanded out from there. And so, Fanfare is really a place where we have kind of taken this whole like Web3 model of the new technology that exists today and combined it with something that is sort of an on-demand but personalized memorabilia piece. So,
love it.
Talk to us about what can be so special about Fanfare in the sense of like, obviously, money's being exchanged for a service. You can say it very bluntly, but it feels like a little more than that.
Yeah, I think, outside of the money being exchanged, that's the Fanfare platform is really a direct connection for fans and celebrities. We are partnered directly with every celebrity. Every Fanfare piece is hand-signed for each and every order. And I think that the personalization is really what it comes down to. Memorabilia pieces, I think historically, certainly when I was growing up, unless you were at an in-person event, which, flights, hotels, a lot of people can't do that, right? There's a barrier to entry there. And we kind of came up with this concept because it allows people to access their favorite legends, but they can do it in a way where, there's not all that expense and everything else. But the key thing that we kind of didn't realize is that actually it opened the door into a whole new market for people who have friends or family who are fans. Now you can get a gift. Who's going to go fly to Cincinnati to a convention to get their mom some piece? It's rare, right?
Yeah.
Now you can do that. You can do it on demand. You can just go onto the fanfaresignatures.com site and you can place an order for, whoever that might be. And it can be a happy birthday. It can be an anniversary or a congratulations on a graduation or anything you think of.
Wow. And so we're obviously here at Radio Row in Las Vegas for the Super Bowl. Talk to me about some of the things you're doing this week. Are you working with some athletes that are here specifically and going up toward the Super Bowl? Just, talk a little about that.
So, absolutely. So we're really excited. So we have a couple of things that are going on. So we have an official partnership with the NFLPA. So we're starting to roll that out, which is really exciting. So these are like active, current players. We also have a number of partnerships with former players, a lot of the alum Hall of Famers, Marshall Falk. We just signed a partnership deal with Donovan McNabb, so Merrill Hodge. So we're building out very much so, and we're always adding to the roster, which is exciting. This is the event, right?
Yes.
This is the event of the year, and so we're here. Vegas is the city, party city, right? So yeah, we're here to find more networks, and we're excited about it. So
one final question for you from me: when you're talking to athletes, guys like Falk and McNabb, those guys have been pitched 80 years worth of business pitches in their lives, and they'll probably get about 70 more in the next 10 years, right? So,
or today.
What is it?
That's right.
What is it that you think sets Fanfare apart when working with these athletes that makes them say, "Oh, yeah, we do want to work with you"?
I think there's a couple of things. Number one, unlike many startups, we've actually been doing this kind of business for about 10 years. Now, this particular idea is a new incubation within that business. But we have a very long track record of doing this kind of business. I think also it's almost stupidly simple. Everybody who hears it goes, oh yeah, duh. Like, why hasn't anybody done that, right? And that's where we were when we first did it. We went, well, certainly this has been done before. And it hadn't. And so, that's where we really started. I think, it's something that just makes so much sense. I think it's where the industry is going to be going. And so, I think for that reason, when we talked to Donovan, he was like, this is cool. This is great. And it's a service, I think, for them that makes their lives a lot easier, right? I mean, they don't have to now fly as much to these conventions. They can do these orders for their fans. We engage with nonprofits. We do silent auction events where it can be more easily attained and all that kind of stuff. So we see ourselves also as a little bit of a service to both, our partners, whether it's Paramount, CBS, NFLPA. Like, we see ourselves also as like a service to those organizations and to the celebrities. We're basically a turnkey service that allows them to, we handle the entire, from start to finish. So,
well, we'll certainly be looking into Fanfare now. I mean, you got us totally hooked on the concept, but that's all the time we have for today.
Great.
Thanks so much for coming on today, Owen. You're listening to One on One. We'll be right back.
What's up, guys? I'm Julia Moss.
And I'm Will Talent.
We're two of your hosts for one of WFUV's football podcasts, NFL Friday.
Tune in every Friday for all news and updates around the National Football League.
Also, we'll be making our picks of the week around the league on every episode. Check out NFL Friday wherever you get your podcasts to catch the action.
Welcome back to Hour 2 of One on One. That's New York's longest running sports call-in show on Bridge Bridge Gotham joined alongside Brian Raybacks. Again, we're here at Radio Row. We're here in Las Vegas, in the great state of Nevada. We've had the chance to talk to some awesome people in hour one, and
Yeah, you've been busy for the last 20 minutes or so, haven't you?
I've been a little busy. We were just speaking with, I guess to start, we had Alexander Madison, which has definitely been the highlight. We had the chance to speak with Bill Miller, the CEO of the American Gaming Association. We were also just speaking to Owen Delancey, who is the CEO of Fanfare, one of the up-and-coming companies that does a cameo-style personalization with autographs. So we've been very busy with interviews, and hopefully we're going to keep those coming for you. But in the meantime, look, we're here at Radio Row. It's Super Bowl week. We want to talk some more football, and I think a conversation that's been had has been, regarding the tight end position, and it's definitely evolved in recent years. But if there's one constant we've seen, especially with the two teams that are in the Super Bowl, you talk about dominant tight ends, elite tight ends, in both George Kittle and Travis Kelce.
Yeah, there's not many tight end matchups that you see in a Super Bowl where you think, wow, like these are two of the best at their position. And Travis Kelce and George Kittle, I mean, those guys are right up there. Travis Kelce, for the better part of 10 years, has been the most dominant tight end in this league in his time, drawing Gronk comparisons, doing all of that. He's been fantastic, and I know there's a lot more buzz that surrounds him nowadays, but you can't take it away from the fact that he is a terrific player and has really just embodied the Chiefs in the last 10-plus years that he's been there. He's been through the whole way, through all the Super Bowl runs, through the playoff runs they had before that. He has been their guy and has been their mainstay for years. So Travis Kelce, I mean, he embodies the Kansas City Chiefs, but also George Kittle since his rookie year in 2017. I mean, there's not many guys that are true 49ers like he's been. He's been awesome. He's had some terrific Pro Bowl seasons, just dominating. And like they were saying earlier, and Travis Kelce alluded to this earlier at Media Day, the tight end position is a very selfless job where you're not only tasked with catching passes, but you also have to block on seemingly every single play. So there's a lot that tight ends have to do, and both of these guys excel at it. So I think it's great that we're taking the time to just highlight what these guys do. These are two of the best that you're going to see at that position.
The ultimate hybrid position, because it really does, on the offensive side of the ball, combine the two position groups. You have your offensive line, the guys that strictly do blocking, and you have your running backs, receivers, guys that strictly catch and, move the ball up the field. The tight end is in that position where they do a little bit of both. And I think the blocking aspect of it is often overlooked purely because of the fact that there really isn't much of a statistical perspective you can take. Of course, PFF will put out their pass block grades, but from a purely statistical perspective, you can say, oh, he ran, blocked, or protected the quarterback for X amount of seconds, or, oh, he caught 5 passes for 75 yards. Oh, that makes a lot more sense. So I think for the tight end position, I mean, guys like Travis Kelce and George Kittle are some of the best blocking tight ends. Gronk was more of a receiver. Great blocking, too, but I think that these guys almost do a better job than Gronk did, and it's hard not to draw the Gronk comparisons simply because, him and Kelce are kind of 1A, 1B in terms of the GOAT combo for the tight end, at least in our generation, and I'm looking over at the big FanDuel sign. Gronk did a presser there yesterday. He's going to be kicking his field goal in the Super Bowl commercial, so obviously had reporters thinking about, fielding him questions about what do you think of Travis, the tight end position, and he had a lot of the things to say that I've been echoing, which is that the position is awesome, it's really important, and he's happy the way that they are representing the position.
Yeah, they certainly are representing it well. I mean, you talk about fitting the blocking mold. I mean, George Kittle, I feel like fits that more than Kelce does. Kelce is a very terrific pass catcher and is definitely utilized more in that sense. But George Kittle, when he's not catching a pass and running guys over, he's pancake blocking them. He's doing everything he can to just create lanes either for his receivers or his running backs. He just does a tremendous job of really holding everything down. Both these guys are such team-oriented guys, and they were both playing in the last Super Bowl that these two teams played in Miami. So it kind of all just comes full circle, doesn't it? And these are two guys that are really at the top of their game. I don't know if we're here necessarily to debate who's better necessarily, but we can just appreciate that they're all great in their own right.
Yeah, and you can debate all you want, and I'm not saying that this one game would decide it, but I think if you do have the opportunity to show off your talents on the biggest stage, the Super Bowl is exactly that, and it's going to be awesome to see in the game plan for each of their respective teams, sort of where do they work in the offense, right? Do they have, Kelsey was much quieter this year than he had been in years past. And
he only caught 5 touchdowns.
Yeah, quiet for his standards is still a very solid year for, well over 50% of the tight ends in the National Football League. But a guy like Kelsey holds himself to a higher standard. Of course, a lot of publicity surrounding him with the Taylor Swift thing too, which is, we saw firsthand going into media how many more people that brought in. And I have to explain to people, like, Travis Kelsey, you said it really well, Brian, for the better part of the past decade has been a big name. Like, this new attention is great for him. But with or without Taylor, he was the defining tight end and was getting, the right amount of media attention that a guy like that deserves. And with Tyreek Hill no longer on the Chiefs, he and Patrick Mahomes are that's the new duo. That's basically the next Brady and Gronk.
Yeah, people were skeptical of what was going to happen exactly after Tyreek Hill left. But, I mean, Mahomes and the Chiefs, they've just shown that, okay, we have Travis Kelsey, like, we're good.
We'll be all right.
So they have done just about as well for themselves as they can. They won the Super Bowl last year. They're back this year. They have a chance to repeat for the first time in about 20 years. We haven't had a repeat Super Bowl champion. But these two guys are the pinnacle of the tight end position. But it kind of brings up more of a larger conversation that the tight end position in the NFL, it's just that where do you value it exactly? Because you have guys like the Kelseys and the Kittles, and if you want to go to Mark Andrews as well, you can. But then after that, it's really kind of just slim pickings. So really, it's such a valuable position where, like, if you have the best of the best guys, those teams usually flourish, and that's what we've seen.
I think anyone that plays fantasy football can certainly attest to that, because you have that tight end slot you have to fill. And to your point, there's only 5 really elite guys. I think you mentioned Mark Andrews as well. I think Sam Laporta really made a name for himself this past year as a member of the Detroit Lions. There's a couple other names you can throw in there. Evan Ingram had a good year. That's neither here nor there, because the point we're trying to make is that the position's very valuable. But you asked the question, where do you value it? And it's hard because it's hard to push all your chips to the center of the table for one position. I think that goes for all of football. And I think you see in fantasy, like, do you take Travis Kelsey early in the draft? Oh, that means that you have a tight end that's great, but your running backs and your wide receivers maybe not as great. And, it's not as much of a priority maybe for some teams just because of how hard it is to get a good tight end and to retain them. So, bolster up the wide receiver position, bolster up your backfield. But I do think that the tight end position is very valuable. And I heard a quote, and I forget who said it, but it's kind of the trend is that you look at any dominant team that can win a Super Bowl, you look at their roster, more often than not, they have a really good tight end.
Yeah, and we've seen that with Super Bowl champions in the last couple of years. Zach Ertz, when the Eagles won the Super Bowl, he absolutely dominated. Travis Kelsey, when the Chiefs have won now a couple of times, and just think back, even Rob Gronkowski on the Buccaneers even.
Caught 2 touchdowns in that Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
So there's just been a lot of strong tight ends in this league. It just doesn't necessarily fit with the rest of the NFL. But it also kind of depends on what are you looking for in the tight end position. Are you looking for that great pass catcher, or just looking for somebody that you can stack on the line and just get an extra blocker? Because that's what some tight ends are. And I mean, you look at even just an example of last year with the Giants, like Daniel Bellinger was a frequent pass catcher, but his main role was to be kind of a blocker, a blocking type guy for Saquon Barkley and the rest of that offense. And there's countless other examples in the league where you can think about that. But overall, like, it just depends what you're looking for. And with guys like Kelsey and Kittle and Mark Andrews who do both really well, you just don't find that a lot in today's NFL. But you also haven't really found it a ton in the NFL throughout the history. Like there was no one like Gronk when Gronk was really at the peak of his game.
Yeah, I like to say it's a consistently inconsistent position throughout all of the years. There's been dominant tight ends, but it was never like, oh, every team is totally stacked. And I love the point you make about a guy like Daniel Bellinger, because the neat thing about a guy like him is, like, yeah, you line him up as a blocker, but occasionally you send him out for a short pattern, whether that be you send him out in the flat, some sort of a shallow cross pattern. You disguise that in your offense. That's kind of how you move the ball down the field. They expect him to be a blocker, and he comes out and he gets open. No one's expecting him there. that's kind of the other power of the tight end. So even the tight ends that don't get the ball a lot, when they get it maybe once or twice a game, it could be for a big gain or an important gain. So I like that point that you made there, Brian. And, it's just, it is fascinating, the tight end position, because it's, it's a position that is just so special, right? Because you have these big, strong guys that can kind of do it all, right? They're not just the big O linemen, or they're not the skinny receivers. They kind of have the build of what, ask a European, what do you think of for an American football player? They think of a guy that's 6'6" and 250 pounds and it can run through a brick wall.
Yeah, and the tight end position, just with the way that it's kind of gotten scarce where you find guys like this, I mean, it just shows how valuable it's been. And you can just look through so many examples. Like the top offenses seem to all have like that tight end. Like the Lions offense this year, I mean, they relied on Sam Laporta heavily, and they were able to do it. So, I mean, we just look at guys like Kittle and Kelsey. I really just enjoy the healthy respect that they have for each other. I mean, you're hearing it all the time in these media days where they keep just praising each other and just building each other up. So they both really like each other, and also just being involved in the community with Tight End U. Both of them are really involved in that. So they've really done a nice job of building up this aura around themselves and really the top tier tight ends in the NFL. But it really amazes me just the healthy respect that these two have for each other. And it's great that they're both going up against each other now in this Super Bowl 58.
Yeah, the respect, I love that too. And I think the tight end U thing is so interesting because it kind of shows, we've talked about why the position is so unique and special, and that the players understand that they've built a community around it, that they know, they all understand each other because they all have such unique experiences. Like, oh, you block, you catch, everyone else on my team, they don't do that. You know what I mean? So to kind of have that community and to kind of grow awareness for the position, to kind of get more guys involved, right? You see, tight end U, I want to be a part of that, right? That's kind of something to grow the game. And I think one more thing before we wrap this segment I wanted to talk about is, you did mention Bellinger and the Giants, and a quick Giants question here. They had Darren Waller last year. He was in and out, but when he was playing, I think he kind of showed the value in the tight end. And next year it's going to be really interesting. Do you see this Giants offense kind of flowing through the tight end position? Because at the receiver position, I think the Giants have a lot of question marks.
They do have a lot of question marks at receiver, but also when you look at the Giants and how they operate their offense, there's just a lot of questions that need answers.
That's right.
Is Saquon Barkley going to be back? Is Daniel Jones going to be healthy? Is Darren Waller going to be healthy? Because that's the thing. Darren Waller, as great of a player as he can be, he can't stay on the field.
I know.
So that's a whole thing that you have to look at there with, can you really run through the tight end position if your guy that you traded for and really thought was going to change the offense, if he's not there, he can't necessarily do that. So that's just the only thing. He's a great player, but just overall health has been just a crippling thing for him. And he had more hamstring issues this year. He's had that in years past. So I really don't know. But the Giants also have to figure out a lot of other things other than the tight end. They got to figure out how to bring their running back. Are they drafting a quarterback? Are they looking in the market for that? Can they upgrade at receiver? There's a lot that needs to be addressed over there.
Too many questions to be answered, but figured I'd float that. We were on the topic of tight ends.
Yeah, why not,
Figured we'd at least discuss it, but as soon as I said that, I realized, the Giants have to figure out a lot of things before next year. And so do the two teams here at Radio Row. We're going to wrap this segment. It was a lot of fun talking tight ends with you, Brian.
It was. Do you think either of them are catching a touchdown in the Super Bowl?
I think both.
Both?
I think both.
I have a hard time seeing Travis Kelce not finding his way into the end zone.
Yes, and I think if Travis does, I think Kittle will have to match him. And
Kelce got in there a couple of times at Buffalo, and then just had a crazy first half in Baltimore.
And he went off. It'd be hard to see not. I mean, I think at least one will score. I would put money on both. I'd feel good about both of those guys scoring.
I'm sure a lot of people walking around Vegas are going to put some bets in there.
More saying it as an expression, but but seriously, that's where we are, and it all remains to be seen, but that'll just about do it for our segment. When we return, we will see what we will talk about when we return. It's a rapidly evolving show here from Radio Row, perhaps an interview coming your way. We'll be right back on One-on-One.
How's it going, everybody? I'm Lou Orlando.
And I'm Colin Lochran.
And we're two of your main hosts for WFV Sports' NHL podcast, 5 on 3.
We'll keep you updated on the Rangers, Islanders, Devils, and of course, the Stanley Cup Final.
Home ice for all things NHL, 5 on 3.
Welcome back to One on One here from Radio Row in Las Vegas for Super Bowl 58. Brian Raybacks across from Julia Moss. And Julia, we were just talking tight ends and the impact players of Travis Kelce and George Kittle and how huge they've been for both of these teams. But we have to focus on one true game changer in this whole deal with the Niners and how they've really been able to get to where they are, and a lot of that is due in large part to Christian McCaffrey. I mean, when you look at his skill set and really how the Niners have played since he got there, they've almost looked unbeatable, and a lot of that is just due to the presence he has, the versatility he has, and just the dynamic ability of this player. We knew he had it all in Carolina, but now he's really just taken it to a different level with the Niners, and a huge reason why San Francisco's sitting here today.
I mean, he was already regarded as one of the better running backs in the NFL before this season, and then he comes out, has 1,400 yards. That's a career high this season, along with the receiving yards that we know he's very much capable of having. And you know, the narrative around Christian McCaffrey for a long time was he can't stay healthy. If he was healthy, he'd be good. And now he's proven that if he can stay healthy, there's not an NFL player that really is better than him, at least with running backs, with the dual threat of him being able to rush and receive at pretty much the highest rate in the NFL. So, Christian, I mean, it can't be overstated rather, how good Christian McCaffrey has been. I mean, he was on my fantasy team this year.
That's a good pick. That's a good
Absolutely
pick.
carrying my team. I finished second to last in my league, but
Sorry?
I finished second to last.
So you had 1,400-yard Christian McCaffrey.
Yep.
You had, the same Christian McCaffrey that had 21 touchdowns this year.
Yep.
So when you think of all the fantasy points that is, and you said second to last?
Yeah, it makes sense
So
that's confusing.
what happened there exactly?
Would you like to know what went wrong?
Sure.
Would you like to hear what my second round pick was?
Oh, no.
It starts with a J and rhymes with Bonathan Taylor. Picked him in the second round, knowing that
he didn't play for a while, but when he
6 weeks.
When he was playing, he was pretty good.
Damage had been done at that point.
A lot of that was at the end of the season, though, which is probably not great for you because your season was probably done by that point.
But I think the point is that my team was so terrible and so trashed that the fact I finished second to last and not last really is only because of the excellent work of Christian McCaffrey.
Christian McCaffrey, not really similar to your situation, but he was a league winner in a lot of leagues just because of the numbers he was putting up. I mean, it felt like he was scoring a touchdown every single week. I mean, we're in Vegas. If you want to talk about betting, people could put a bet on McCaffrey touchdown
Near
every
lock.
week, and it was seemingly always a guarantee.
Yeah.
Just the way that they feed him the ball, and he's such a physical runner too. He doesn't just do a lot of dancing around. You'll see some running backs get into that. He'll just kind of run right through guys, and when he does make a cut, it's just so smooth the way he's able to break tackles and always stay on his feet. It's just really a game changer. When the Niners acquired him in the middle of last season, I don't know if people really envisioned this being the peak of his ability, because obviously with McCaffrey beforehand, and we've been talking about, he dealt with a lot of injuries prior to his career in San Francisco, but I mean, since coming to the Niners, he hasn't missed a beat. He has always been on the field. He missed just one game this year. I mean, he has always been there, and he's been dependable, which I think people were kind of skepticizing a little bit when he was in Carolina, but now that's undisputable when he's in with the Niners.
It's like Superman out there. His one kryptonite was the injuries and not being dependable. Now that he is a dependable, ready running back who is just playing lights out game in and game out. That's the other thing, is that he doesn't have a week where he is not performing like a lot of running backs do. He is consistently so good, and I think a lot of the reason for that, and we can talk about the Niners as a whole, is because if you stop Christian McCaffrey, okay, cool. You have to guard Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, and with an incredible quarterback, Brock Purdy has the ability to rush from time to time. It's you have to pick your poison, and a lot of times, it's hard to fully commit to Christian McCaffrey when the air game is so good for the 49ers as well. So when you think about all the weapons that this team has, it's why they're so good, because if you shut down one option, 3 more doors open, and for Christian McCaffrey, he's just taken full advantage of that and has one of the most incredible seasons that I've seen from a running back. I know the MVP is oftentimes a quarterback award, but I think Christian McCaffrey has fully proven his value to this team.
There's a legitimate lane and a legitimate argument that you can propose that Christian McCaffrey, he could be the MVP. I mean, he was in that. He got the nomination, and they're going to announce the awards tonight, actually, at the NFL Honors. So that'll be exciting. Brock Purdy and McCaffrey both nominated for that award. And, yeah, it just comes down to dependability. McCaffrey has been on the field. He can do so much out of the passing game and just out of the backfield. He's so dynamic. And just another thing about him is that he's not going quietly when these playoffs have started. And he's got 2 touchdowns in each of the playoff games against Green Bay and against Detroit. So, really, it's just opposing defenses have not had an answer for him. And he's just been giving the Niners so much value, which is why I think it's a kind of cool moment to go back and just look at this trade, because the Niners, I mean, when you look at it, it was for a second, third, and fourth round picks in 2023, and then a fifth round pick next year. So they gave up no first round picks for this guy. You think of all the guys that people have been traded for first rounders. Like, I remember the Giants got a first rounder for Odell.
Right.
And you think McCaffrey, with the way he is, and this is no knock on Odell, but you'd think that someone with that level of talent warrants that kind of a draft pick, but McCaffrey did not, whether it be injury history or just malpractice on the Carolina Panthers end. The Niners got him for relatively cheap, and I think that should not be understated, because he's really just taken off, and the Niners didn't give up a whole lot for it.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the trade and you think to yourself, okay, like, Christian McCaffrey is forcing his way out of the Carolina Panthers. Like, this is on paper a trade where it seems like it's a disgruntled star player who, like, is going to refuse to play for this team. But what's so crazy is that was not the case whatsoever. Christian McCaffrey did not think he was going to be traded, which is, it makes the trade even more confusing. I guess it is just because of the injuries, lack of dependability, whatever it may be. But Chris McCaffrey has gone on record in interviews saying he wanted to be a Carolina Panther for life.
Mm-hmm, yeah, and we're seeing that. But at the same time, the Panthers, they needed to rebuild in some way. Now, could they have gotten a better package for McCaffrey? Absolutely. And whether McCaffrey wanted to be in Carolina for life, and that's the team that gave him the opportunity initially, I think he's doing pretty well for himself in San Francisco right now. I mean, he's going off, and it's crazy to think that he's playing in his first Super Bowl with the way that he has always been an elite running back at his position, but he's never gotten to showcase himself on this kind of a stage and take in all the media that surrounds him. I mean, we were at Niners Media Day yesterday, and if you go over there, McCaffrey's got a ton of cameras around him. There's people screaming his name, trying to get questions in.
Yep.
So he's got a lot of buzz surrounding him, and I'm sure he's taking all this Super Bowl hoopla and just everything, the craziness, the chaos that surrounds it. You got to take it in a little bit and just remember it, because you always remember your first one. And McCaffrey certainly right in the bright lights, taking in the Super Bowl here in Vegas.
It's one of those situations where it's like he wanted to be a Panther for life, but like it probably wasn't the best move for his career, and now he's seeing that. He's in a Super Bowl right now. The Carolina Panthers, you know, it's easy to say that now because they have the #1 draft pick once again, but this was not a franchise that was heading in a direction to be able to fulfill a superstar on the roster. And if they just kept Christian McCaffrey, it would just be wasting his career at that point. So I think him getting traded, whether or not he was happy at first, which I'm sure it eased the burn a little bit that he was going to the 49ers, who had just gone to a Super Bowl a year or two before. I'm sure that made it a lot easier, but man, it's heartwarming and it's fun to see Christian McCaffrey be able to be on a good team and be an impact player on a good team, because he's gone through so much with injuries, with the roster around him at Carolina, which towards the end there was very ugly. It was Christian McCaffrey versus everyone at certain points.
You look at Carolina now and just the
somehow
way
worse.
They've gotten just worse, and really anyone in that offense has not been put in a position to succeed. Bryce Young immediately comes to mind, the #1 overall pick, and just he didn't look like that at all this year, and a lot of that is just because there's not a good roster surrounding him. And I don't want to get into the hypotheticals necessarily, but I mean, Christian McCaffrey's been so important to the 49ers that if you take him off of this team and really just imagine him not being a weapon out of the backfield, just where are the Niners right now? Are they in this position without him?
It's a good question. If there were a team that you would take away an MVP candidate from and they'd be okay, I think it'd be the Niners. Now, whether okay means you're in the Super Bowl or okay means you've made the playoffs and lost in the wild card, I think that's a different discussion. I think you have Brock Purdy, you have Debo, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle. The weapons are there without him, but Chris McCaffrey absolutely pushes this team into the Super Bowl echelon and the Super Bowl favorite echelon. So without him, I think this 49ers team is still fringe contender, but with him, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean, you imagine the roster around him. It's still superbly talented. The Niners are just dominant in seemingly every facet of the game, whether their defense being really good, they have a strong receiving core, their offensive line is great up front most of the time, but really just when you have a weapon like McCaffrey, it just changes everything. It makes the passing game a lot easier too, where Brock Purdy's in a much better position to have success with a weapon like McCaffrey, where you always, as a defense, have to be aware of him. Andy Reid was saying yesterday in his press conference that, you have to be aware of where Fred Warner is at all times. The same can certainly be said about Chris McCaffrey on the defensive side. So that's also something you have to be able to look forward to.
Yes, and I do want to continue this conversation, but I think we have to send it to a break because we have Matthew Butler from the Las Vegas Raiders hometown team here for an interview. We will be joined by him in just a couple minutes. Stay tuned. You are listening to One on One live from Vegas.
Hey everyone, I'm Will Grant.
I'm Chris Persianen.
And we're two of the hosts for WFUV's very own basketball podcast, Pick and Pod.
Tune in weekly for updates and our takes on the latest around the NBA, as well as exclusive insight from our very own Knicks and Nets beat reporters.
We'll have you covered on everything from all of the NBA's latest drama we know and love,
to debating all year long which team will get to lift that golden Larry O'Brien in June.
So don't miss a beat from the hardwood on WFUV's Pick and Pod.
Welcome back to Radio Row here in Las Vegas, Nevada. I'm Chris Persianen alongside Bridge Gotham, and we're honored to be joined right now by the 175th overall pick in the 2022 NFL Draft, Matthew Butler, DT for the Raiders, the hometown team here in Vegas. Man. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Of course. Pleasure to be here.
Well, talking about that draft, right, I think is a good place to start. Coming in as a fifth rounder and having to make a name for yourself, is it almost reassuring how much talent goes in those later rounds and how people go on years later and say, oh, look, Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant, you know?
So reassuring, yeah, maybe when I first got drafted and you look at like some of the other guys drafted around me in previous drafts and drafted later than me. But at this point, you know, you have to draw a lot of confidence from within. You have to draw a lot of reassurance from yourself and make sure that you take a lot of pride, confidence in what you do and the efforts that you put forth. You know, if your effort's poor, you're not going to have a lot of confidence about yourself. If your effort's great and you know what it takes and you continue to do that consistently, there'll be a lot of great things to happen.
And talk to me about, we were talking right before the show, coming out to Vegas, such a unique place, not just to live, but also to play football. Obviously, the Raiders are still relatively new to Vegas, and, they've had certainly their ups and downs, but I think you guys have certainly found your footing with your coach now staying on. I mean, talk to me about what Antonio Pierce means, as a coach.
Yeah, so Antonio Pierce, he loves to say he's not a former player. He's still a player. This is what he does. And that connectivity between player and coach, who used to be a player, who still is a player, it's paramount. It's irreplaceable. You have that connection, you have that trust, you have that ability to resonate with the people that are around you, and us resonate with him, and that's going to put him in an awesome position to lead us. He knows what he's doing. And then we have all the talent in the world. All we got to do is go out there, execute on a high level, and play football the right way, the Raider way.
Yeah.
Now, when you talk about the Raider way, right, there's a definition of that that's come with Antonio, I think, taking that step up. But he was always around, right? So what was it like with that transition and going into next season, are you working in tandem with him, or do you talk to more defensive coaches specifically? I feel like, you're on his side of the ball, so maybe he has a little shine for the defense. What's it like working with him about your offseason goals heading into next season?
Yeah, so, we've communicated, and we've been in constant communication since he was the interim. But it's always important also to make sure that what you're doing is what you're doing as well. I have a plan that's based off of my feedback from coaches and players. And then, for anybody who is striving to do the things that we do, or anybody just listening, there's a lot that just goes in that we just have to make conscious decisions to make efforts to go do. So, I'm doing those things in the off season. I'm staying connected to football, and I'm trying to let all my experiences on and off the field just connect and intertwine. Things that I learned on the field I can bring back home to my family, and things that I learned with my family, or things that I've even learned in my childhood, I can take to the team and try to just be a good man, a great teammate, and obviously I want to be one of the best players in the league. So, I intend on that happening for me, and it all really intertwines in a really awesome way.
Yeah, and we'd love to see what you've done already, and I have to imagine being here at Super Bowl week can feel very motivating. I think, all the excitement around here. Talk to me about what are some of the things you've done. Have you, met some cool people on Radio Row, some players? What's that experience been like here?
Yeah, just mostly seeing the former players, the legends, the Hall of Famers, literally just walking around here. You see Joe Montana, you see Warren Sapp, J.J. Watt, Deion Sanders, some of those names I just mentioned are Super Bowl winners. All of those names I've just mentioned are legends. And again, all of those names I just mentioned played football at the highest level and set an example for what I watched growing up. I would love to do the same thing. I intend on doing the same thing, so yeah, it is motivating, definitely. Not to mention the Super Bowl is being played here in Vegas. And I think myself and every other player and the Raiders and every other team is trying to get there. So definitely, big motivating factor. Happy to be here, happy to take part and experience it, but almost even happier just to see some of the legends that have played the same game that I get to play. It's awesome.
When it comes to your hunger in football, is there something regarding, your story, how you got here, that kind of fuels that keeps you going and ticking and pushing?
Yeah, definitely. I just love playing ball. I played other sports growing up, and I liked them, and I've done other things. And I like to say to people who, might doubt me, or I've actually said this before, I could probably find a way to make $1 million doing something else. But it certainly don't work out as quick as football, and it's certainly not as fun as football. And I don't have the love and the passion for those things, even though I might like to do them as much as football. Football is what I love to do. And if you love to do something, you want to be the best at it. You want to make a name for yourself, and you want to try to impact others trying to get up and do the same thing. So that's what I try to do day in and day out.
Yeah. So looking ahead to the offseason, do you have any exciting plans before, you got to get back to training camp this summer?
No, nothing too exciting. I have a little son on the way with my wife.
Congrats.
And I'm just working on being a great father and a great husband to my daughter and to my wife. So those are the main things. We'll get out, we'll enjoy ourselves, but nothing big or exciting. And then just try to make sure that I can provide for them, not only, in the obvious ways, but also provide an awesome example for them in what I do and how I do it day in and day out.
You were talking earlier about the kind of symbiotic relationship your home life and your work life have, in the sense where, of course, everyone's wife wants them home earlier, everyone's boss wants them in earlier, right? But you were talking about learning from each experience and bringing it to the other. What's something that maybe your daughter taught you at home or your wife taught you at home? Maybe patience comes to mind with the baby on the way.
You hit the nail right on the head. It's patience and it's discipline. And I talk to myself, and that sounds crazy, but if you're not talking to yourself, what are you doing? I talk to myself and I remind myself, be patient in this process. Be patient in the process of fatherhood, of husbandry, of being a professional athlete. There's ebbs and flows in everything, whether it be your faith, whether it be just aspects of your life, however you perceive it, there's ebbs and flows to everything. Just keep being patient, and then, very important, once you figure out what works, please keep going, be consistent, and don't quit. Don't never quit. Those are the main things that, you learn in life, just in general. Yeah, I learned them at home, on the football field, with my teammates and everything, and you just try to cultivate it into the things that you do on and off the field and everywhere that you go.
One final question for you, Matthew, and don't mess with success, probably a good mantra to keep in mind, but a little more technical this time, just to nerd out on you for a little. When you're lining up, right, a lot of people, and I would say smart people, say the game is determined in the trenches. What about that release, the second that ball is snapped, is that a rush for you? Does that speak to you? Do you feel
say the least.
Do you feel like you're in control of the game?
It's these three moments that we just die for. And I say that, with all due respect. That moment that you line up and force meets force, and when you hit somebody with your hands and you feel them not pushing you back when they're on their heels and their head is snapped back, obviously the point of impact on the ball carrier, just knocking this guy, don't find me, knocking this guy out, just trying to impose your will on this guy. And then when you get up and you're at home, or even if you're away and you hear the crowd cheering or booing you or whatever it is, you feel like you're on top of the world. And, those moments, those are the small moments that the big moment, those are the small moments within the big moment that these small, minute moments lead to. So it's an amazing process. And like I said, you still have to be patient. I haven't had enough of those feelings yet in the NFL, and I'm striving to get there. And, like I said, be patient in your process. And once you find your process, don't quit. And be able to adapt is another big thing. So definitely.
And I lied earlier. I'm sorry, not true to my character, but one more question.
Oh, man.
Your foundation.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what you're trying to get off the ground, my man.
Yeah, so, we're on our tiptoes trying to get off the ground for the Matthew Butler Foundation. A big part of this foundation is ensuring that fathers in general, and also fathers who are fighting for custody of their children, have the support that they need, that those families continue to stay unified and together, and that those families have support. And they say it takes a village to raise a child, that those families have a village, and that the children that come from those families are provided for, and that any and all autoimmune disease or illness, sickness, or ailment that can be detected early on in childhood is detected early on in childhood, so that those children can receive great care, great comfort in their everyday life, and that they don't feel separate or apart from anyone else. So,
can our listeners just look up the Matthew Butler Foundation?
Yeah, so like I said, we're still getting it off the ground. your best thing to do for anybody listening is just to follow me on social media at MatthewButler.94. I'll continue to put plenty of content about, my life, the NFL, and importantly, the Matthew Butler Foundation out there. And once we get it fully off the ground, I would greatly appreciate y'all's support, and I hope y'all greatly appreciate what we're trying to do in the Las Vegas community, in North Carolina, where I'm from, in Tennessee, where I went to college, and then hopefully soon all around the country.
That's fantastic, man.
Love it.
That's a brave venture to take on, but what you were saying about fathers having that support is really important, especially, in a world where sometimes you feel like you're supposed to have your own back, and when you don't, falling over hurts. So I really like what you got going on, and that just sounds, it was heartwarming. So thanks for sharing with our listeners, and Matthew, thanks for taking this time to hang out with us.
Yeah, appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This
Appreciate
is
the
Matthew
time.
Butler,
Appreciate you.
Las Vegas Raiders defensive tackle. You can follow him on social media, MatthewButler.94, to find out more about the Matthew Butler Foundation, helping families, youth around the country. Thanks so much for tuning in to this interview. We're here on Radio Row in Las Vegas, Nevada. Super Bowl week is upon us. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more.
Hi, my name is Ryan Rucco, WFUV class of 2008. WFUV is your home for all Things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One-on-One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
Welcome back, live from Las Vegas. Julia Moss joined with Brian Rayback. So we're gonna talk about football, but we're gonna zoom out a little bit and talk more about the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift saga, but not necessarily in the way that you think. We're not going to be analyzing the relationship, nothing like that. But I think it is, Brian. I think it is like a very important conversation to have about how Taylor Swift's involvement in the NFL has really impacted the marketing stance, because there are so many new fans of the NFL now.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I know people will probably groan to hear that we're talking about Taylor Swift and whatnot, but listen, you can't ignore it because it's such a big story. I mean, Travis Kelce's going to press conferences and getting asked about it. Like, it's an unavoidable story, but also something that's worth talking about because it's a way for the NFL to really grow their fan base. And that's a lot of what the NFL has tried to do. They're always trying to grow their fan base.
Yep.
That's what the Peacock, streaming, whatever their whole deal with Amazon Prime, with Thursday Night Football, the exclusivity of it is supposed to help grow the fan base. And I know a lot of people say, well, wouldn't it do the opposite? You're shutting people off from watching the game, but it's more so that's for Amazon viewers or Peacock viewers that would not normally watch football to be able to have access to it on a random Thursday night or Sunday night. And that's kind of what this Taylor Swift thing is. They show Taylor Swift a lot at these games, but at the same time, she is a huge, huge draw. And we've seen already it has had an impact. NFL viewership this year jumped 7%. And is that a product of Taylor Swift, or is it a product of just an increase of viewers? I don't know, but I'd like to think it was the former, of Taylor Swift having some sort of an impact. So, listen, is it overkill sometimes? Yes, at the surface, but also the NFL is very smart in doing it for a good reason.
You make a good point about the 7% increase. First of all, 7% may not sound like a whole lot, but the NFL is already the most watched sport in America by a lot, too. You look at TV ratings and how people are scheduling their broadcasts. You always try and avoid the NFL because of how dominant it is. But it seems like we have yet another interview with us, Brian. We are going to continue this conversation.
We'll revisit this, yeah.
We will certainly revisit this, but we'll be right back with an interview. Stay tuned. You're listening to One on One live from Vegas.
Hi, this is Michael Kay, WFUV class of 1982. WFUV is your home for all things Fordham athletics, with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to our Saturday show, One on One. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV sports.
Welcome back to Radio Row here in Las Vegas, Nevada at Super Bowl week. It's a big one, the biggest of the year, in fact. And I'm Chris Persiine, and here alongside Brian Raybacks. Honored to be joined right now by the 211th overall pick in the 6th round of the 22 NFL Draft, Quentin Lake, ladies and gentlemen.
You guys did your research. That's awesome.
Thanks so much for taking the time to join us.
Of course.
First of all, let's just talk about what's going on right here.
Yeah.
How is this all?
This is it's pretty hectic. You would never think too. This is actually my first one. I know they do it every year.
It's our first too.
Yeah, which is amazing. Oh, congratulations!
Thank
I know
you.
it must have been hard to get a spot over here too. So I mean, that's a credit to you guys. But no, this is it's honestly impressive. That's what I would say. It's impressive, with all the media, all that stuff. So, but yeah, looking to have a good time. Yeah.
Well, Quentin, with the Rams, you're over in Los Angeles, and I'm just wondering, I guess I'll start technical with you. You personally as a player, what are you looking for pre-snap? What are you seeing? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? Are you hearing a song in your head? Like, what's your brain kind of saying to you pre-snap?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of go through – what I do is there's a process that I go through. It's alignment, assignment, and technique. You can use that acronym AAT. So, where am I supposed to align? What's my assignment? What coverage are we in? Am I supposed to have outside or inside leverage? And then what technique am I going to use? Am I going to be pressed or am I going to be off? And all those things, if you run that through every play, it puts you in the right position to make a play. So that's a pretty easy acronym that I use, really before every play to kind of get me ready.
You were drafted in 2022,
Yeah.
got some reps in year one, but now first year to second year, just what do you think were the biggest things that you focused on that you wanted to improve in your game, and what kind of strides did you think that you made personally in your sophomore season?
Yeah, a big thing for me was play strength. That was a big thing coming from my rookie year to my second year now was just, play strength, being strong on tackles, having that physicality to set edges and, being physical with my hands. And this year was kind of interesting. I went through a lot of position changes. Started at really dime, then kind of moved to nickel, and then played safety a little bit. So I think another big thing was my versatility, being able to play different spots, because at the end of the day, I just wanted to be on the field.
Yep.
And so those were probably the two biggest things, being able to play different positions, and then also, my play strength is, being strong when I tackle, and being physical, throughout my game.
So we can talk numbers for a second here, because your stats blew up from year one to year two.
100%.
Now, obviously, it's not the player that changed substantially. It's the opportunity, it's the position,
100%.
et cetera. But, man, 10 total tackles rookie season, 53 in year two. So
that's a big jump.
Making a bunch of more plays. What do you think? Was it something about your day-to-day, or do you think it's more like just getting accustomed to the league? Like, what kind of helped you be ready for when your number and your name did get called to go make those plays, to get in there and make that hit?
I think one was just getting the opportunity to be out there. Thankful for my coaches to trust me to put me out there, obviously. And I always say this, the biggest thing is just film study. Just like you guys do your homework and you guys have notes, it's the same way in the league too. Us writing down notes constantly and just being able to, when you take notes, understanding it, seeing on the film, and then applying that to the game is huge. And that's what I felt like I was able to do this year, which was help me, be having anticipation, being in the right position to make plays and stuff like that. So I think that was the biggest thing, is film studying and doing my homework each and every day.
How different does the preparation process for a game every week, how much does that change when you go from college to the pros? And I'm sure, obviously, during the week, you're going through practices in college, you're watching film, but what kind of level is different at the NFL? Like, when did you realize, wow, this is like a different whole world that I'm in right now?
Yeah, it's not a hobby anymore. It's really not. It's tough. It's tough to say because, in college you got school, you got, social a little bit, and then you got football. But when you're in the NFL, it's really just football, and you use film study as your school, So that's where I think the biggest level of preparation takes off is really, it's not a hobby anymore, it's a job, it's your profession, taking it seriously. Spending maybe an hour, 2 hours each day on film and what you can see and how the offenses are trying to attack you. And another big thing is your opponent sees everything 100%. Like, if you're playing outside leverage, I had it in the Lions game too. They watched my film. I asked my boy Amon-Ra, who I've been friends with, for a long time, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and he told me after one of the plays, he was like, yeah, we looked at it, we looked at your film, we did a little self-scout, and we saw, like, hey, if you're in this leverage, we're going to run this route and stuff like that. So, they really, really dial in on, potentially where you're weak and also where you're strong to prepare for it.
That's analytics, too. Like, it's taken over the sports world. Just how have you kind of noticed that evolve as you've kind of progressed through your career as a sports player?
Yeah, PFF has a thing where you can get every single play that you ran. And I'm sure for you guys probably looked at it too. Every play, every position, where you lined up at, what tackle you made, interception, pass deflection. They have every statistical category. So
And
applying
they tell
that,
you how you did.
Exactly, exactly. Give me the grade too. So applying that to our game and using it as a system to improve. I mean, it's crazy what you can do now. Because I talk to my dad all the time because he played in a whole different era, and he's like, it's literally a cheat code. Like, you have everything that you need in today's game to be successful. So it's a big difference.
So you kind of perfectly led into my next question mentioning St. Brown from the Lions, because I was going to ask about, and I thought maybe even it was a bad question, like, do you talk to other players around the league about what they see? You know, you got a friend that's a DB, says, hey, Coop Cup, he wiggles that left shoulder if he's going to run us. Like, do y'all have tells that you kind of share with each other?
Yeah, we'll it's not so specific where it's like, hey, if he does this, yada, but he'll be like, hey, you know, how is Cooper Cup, or how is Puka, or how is Kyron, or how is whoever on our team? You know, what are they like? You know, are they really how they're portrayed in the media? Are they really how they're portrayed in practice? And we'll kind of just go like that. It's not like, hey, if he takes this step and this, it doesn't get to that specific, especially if you're talking to a friend or something like that. But yeah, I just talked to him yesterday, you know, and we were chopping it up, and it's funny to see like different perspectives, especially from an offensive player, on, you know, how they have different perspectives on defense and offensive players. But yeah, we talk shop all the time.
And also when you look at camaraderie throughout the league, just how important it is, do you think, for players to have that? Obviously, everyone's trying to create their own path and try to establish themselves as a player, but how important is it to just have that respect for other players and then also have the connection that you have with your colleagues and opposing players?
Yeah, it's huge. I do agree with Tom Brady. I don't know if you guys saw the clips where he said, you know, I don't really have friends, yada, yada, or I don't really, you know, everybody's an enemy or something like that. But
Tom Brady was a whole different
whole different
level.
mentality. But, I mean, you know, when you go from growing up playing high school ball with somebody and then going against them in college, it's good to have friends. Obviously, when you get in between the white lines, it's different. You know, it's a whole different mindset. But, you know, outside of that, it's good to, you know, have friends, because you may never know. You know, St. Brown could be on the Rams. You know, I could potentially be on the Lions one day. Not that I want that to happen, but, you know, you never know. So having connections on other teams is always good, and being able to have friends and at the highest level, you know, it's awesome. It's awesome to be able to talk shop and connect in a different way. Especially, it's fun when you're going against them too. You know, so it's huge. It's huge.
So Brian was asking earlier about the change from college to the pros from a practice level, right? Is there any aspect of the game itself you've noticed being easier or harder? Now, I know the athleticism, right? It's not just the top 1% anymore. It's the top .000, right? So I get that the windows are different, but from the defensive side of the ball, what kind of differences have you noticed? Were any of them easy for you to adjust to? Are you still adjusting to some of them?
I think it goes back to, you know, if you do your homework, you'll be okay. If you put in the work, you'll be okay. Like, the only biggest difference is the quarterbacks. That's what I say. And then, obviously, like you said, that you have freak athletes at every position. But quarterbacks in this league really, honestly, can make every throw. Like, in college, it's like, hey, these are the throws that the quarterback's best at. If you get him to throw these balls, he'll probably, you know, throw a wobbly ball, whatever. Really, I've seen it from Matthew Stafford every day, man. He can throw. He can make every pass. You know, he'll throw from opposite hash, throw a 20-yard comeback. He'll throw a deep ball right on the dot. You know, so that's the biggest thing is these quarterbacks. You can't take them for granted, because they will put the ball, like, you're like, oh yeah, I'm defending this really tight, and then they'll knife it in there. You know, so that's really the biggest difference I've seen, even from year 1 to year 2, and especially from college to the NFL, is the quarterbacks are just they really are.
Well, Quentin, I think I know we spoke right before this about some aspirations in broadcasting for you, maybe a post-play career. I mean, listen, I'm just a sports analyst for WFUV, but I think you got it. So
I feel like I could. I feel like you could.
You got his stamp of approval. Hey, I mean, that's not nothing.
Yeah, that's not anything right there.
Get you like a half-eaten single wing from Popeyes or something. I don't know what that's worth. But listen, Quentin, you got the fit going, and we know you're into fashion.
Yeah.
Talk to us about one thing that a fan might not know about you, our final question.
I love anime. I love anime, bro.
Favorite one?
One Piece.
Okay.
Easily.
But you've committed to all the episodes? Like
Yeah,
you've seen
I'm caught up. Caught
that's
up.
crazy.
Yeah, and people would say, "Oh, I'm never gonna get into it." If you get the chance to watch One Piece, or if you're hesitant to watch it. It's worth it. It's worth your time. Character development, fights, and people might say, "Oh, anime's this or cartoons are this. It's childish. It's this or that." It hits every category and topic that you can think of. So.
It's kind of like how you could watch SpongeBob at 30 and see the episode totally different.
Exactly. But I would say it's much more mature than
Oh,
SpongeBob.
a little bit, yeah.
A little bit,
I'm watching the Dragon Ball from the 80s right now, so it's been a lot of fun.
See? So.
And I'm not an anime dude either, but I had a friend talk me into it, and here I am. So maybe this is a sign, right?
Yeah.
Well, Quentin, for Brian and I, we want to thank you so much for taking the time.
Brian,
It was
Chris,
fantastic to
appreciate you
meet
guys
you.
so much.
It was
Yeah, thank you
fantastic
guys.
to chop it up with you.
Yeah.
If you're listening from home, we're here in Las Vegas, Nevada on Super Bowl Radio Row. Brian Raybacks and I were just joined by versatile Rams. I won't even say safety, just Rams defensive back,
Yeah.
Quentin Lake.
At this point.
Thank you so much for coming on,
Thank
taking the
you guys
time
for
to
having
talk to us. If you're listening at home, stay tuned. We'll be right back with another interview after this break. So one-on-one for WFUV Sports. We'll be right back.
Cool.
Hi, this is Mike Breen, WFUV class of 1983. WFUV is the flagship station of Fordham Athletics with live coverage of Fordham football, Fordham men's and women's basketball, in addition to Saturday one-on-one. Stay right here on 90.7 FM for all things WFUV Sports.
Welcome back to Radio Row here in Las Vegas, Nevada. Previously rainy Las Vegas, Nevada. Today sunny Las Vegas, Nevada. So a little bit better situation weather-wise, but I don't think there's any situation better than the one we're in right now, because I'm Chris Persian and here alongside Julia Moss, and we've got 2 of 3 members of the Stay Hot Pod with us now on one-on-one. Theo, Spawn Hour. I feel like it's wrong to call you Matt. Spawn Hour. Thanks so much for joining us and taking the time. First of all, how's it been out here for y'all? You know, we've seen you on the buses and going back and forth, but your guys' takeaways from the start of the week.
It's been a good time. I think that it's always a great opportunity to talk to these players and try to figure out how to get a good answer out of them, really. It's almost like a minefield where if you ask them to be too specific, they won't give you any details about the game. But then if you don't ask a question that's good enough, then you definitely won't. So it's like trying to find that sweet spot, like on the buses, kind of while you're moving around, like also kind of thinking like what opportunity am I about to get? Like, who am I about to see? Who am I about to talk to? That's
absolutely, man. And it's really funny when you go and ask them the questions and you throw them something, you realize you worded it just wrong, and they're going to give you like, well, you know, we want to just stay focused and execute and yada yada yada.
Keep the main
so
thing,
you just the main thing. But it's been a lot of fun, and it's just a good time when you don't know what's going to pop up and who you're going to see. Yeah.
Las Vegas is a place. We got out last night and just like walked up and down the strip a little bit, and it's like, I don't want to say it was just like being in a GTA lobby, but it's, you know, something.
It's what it's like. It's very bizarre. There's no other place quite like it.
And coming in from New York City for us, you know, we've been told that going to Las Vegas is what it feels like to go to New York if you're not from New York. So I guess now we're finally experiencing this on our own. But getting back to the pigskin, I saw you watching film on the bus back from one of the media sessions. Very on brand. What are you looking for?
Well, in that situation, I had a plan that I wanted to talk to one of the coaches about a couple plays, and I just decided to go with the best plays that they had. I thought that would probably be the ones that they were most willing to talk about. So I just found a cut-up of 10-yard runs from the playoffs from the 49ers and found 3 of them and just put those together in a cut-up, and then went to Chris Forster, the run game coordinator and offensive line coach, and just said, you know, do the work for me for this content, like what's going on here, and then just posted the raw stuff from that. And that's what I've found interesting about this whole experience is I just like being able to watch the coaches work and listen to the players talk about what they're seeing and get it from that perspective. So really this week, I'm not looking for anything. Like, I'm not doing a draft breakdown. I'm not really even, I want the players to do all the work this week while I'm here.
Yeah, and then, you know, something that I'm so intrigued about is you look around and it's like a who's who of whoever. Like, we talked about that a little bit. What's been the coolest moment for you guys so far since you've been here?
This moment, there was a 49ers player that came up to me on opening night and told me that they liked him, that he liked our
That's so
podcast.
dope.
Yeah.
That would qualify. Matt?
I'm trying to think of the coolest moment. We've seen a lot of people. Just like I think just being there with the entire team and the 49ers, it's a crazy experience. It's my first time here. You've been here one time before, Theo. So just being in that room and like you're sitting there and you're really like watching like the Kyle Shanahan press conference instead of seeing it on a video. Same thing with Brock Purdy. So that to me was really cool.
Yeah, a reporter this morning at the Chiefs availability sung half of a Taylor Swift lyric to Travis Kelce, like asked for the mic and then asked him to finish the lyric, and he was like,
not about it.
The guy on the Chiefs. So it was so good. I think this week has been like really great in terms of showing us kind of the whole scene. Like, just it is a production, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's entertainment. It's a production. When it comes to covering the sport, like, do you guys, you know, especially being so technical and like knowing ball so much, right? Is there ever a part of you guys that's like, hey, this is a game, like, have fun? Or is it just so fun for you to get into the nitty-gritty of it all? Because I'll watch a 7-minute draft profile, you know, with my morning cereal from Theo, and I'll feel like I met Drake May after, you know? So is it fun for you to get into those nitty-gritty details, or do you kind of have to push that into your own line of sight?
I think it's fun. I enjoy it. At an event like this, though, I also don't want to be too serious all the time.
Yeah.
Because it is kind of inherently a silly thing to some extent. So it's a mix of both, and it's trying to not be too silly and also add a little bit of kind of fun to it, because I feel like this whole event and this whole production from everybody is kind of geared for, you know, any kind of content, not just X's and O's, but like
it's honestly harder to think of like a funny thing to ask.
Yep.
I'd be totally down to like go to a press conference and try to get a laugh out of Kelsey or someone, but it's like, man, what do you say?
Well, it's hard to think of a funny thing, and then you see somebody else try it, and they whiff on asking a funny thing, and then
Right.
you're like, yeah, there's no way I'm
No, thank you.
going
Not
for that.
taking that risk.
No shot. But yeah, it's a fun event. It doesn't have to be all 100% serious all the time, and I think you can get yourself like worked up if you go into it thinking that too. So it's easier to just take it a little bit easier.
I want to talk about social media a little bit because you guys are very active on TikTok and you have your own podcast. How do those two things coincide, work together? You have the podcast and you're also, as I mentioned, very active on TikTok. How do those two things work together to help your brand?
Well, I think with TikTok, I mean, that's really what helped us build our brands to start off with. The podcast is great, but organically growing a podcast just from making it itself is virtually impossible.
Right.
And you go like platform by platform, that's levels of true to different places. So like somewhere like Twitch, very hard to grow just organically through there. YouTube is kind of sort of in the middle, and then maybe TikTok, it's really good because if you make something good, it will push it out to other people and people see it. So it was more like building up from that on TikTok and building up a little bit of an audience there, taking some of it to Twitter, and then we came together and made the podcast, and that got us off the ground.
Yeah, I think work I do for the personal account, it is a tough balance to strike. Like, do I put this content on TikTok? Do I save it for the podcast? Do I put it on Twitter? It can be tough to like try to find a balance where you're maximizing every platform that you're on, because you want all to be as good as possible. But sometimes, like, I think, well, first of all, I make the most money on TikTok, right? So it's like I kind of wanted things to live there. So when I'm on the podcast, how do I be fresh and talk about things that I haven't just talked about on TikTok all the time? And I think the balance that I've sort of found over the course of doing it is like the podcast is inherently a little sillier, and TikTok is a bit more for the X's and O's. And then when I'm talking with Matt and Bladen, it's like, would you rather have $50 or dinner with Matt? Like, it'll be a conversation that we have, you know? So it's like, at that point, I think people like hearing our personalities a little bit more on the podcast, and then on the personal, it really has kind of just turned into a film room exclusively.
I feel like the mediums kind of decide that for you, in a sense. Like, not to get all McLuhan-y on you with the medium is the message, but TikTok, people want to go on, consume their stuff, call it a day. The podcast is like sitting down to hang out with you guys, you know?
Right.
And I think that just plays into that really naturally.
It's absolutely good to separate it, I think, and to be able to do both. And it's fun to do both. Like, even on TikTok, I've got my main account where I post, all my sports videos, and I have another account where if I want to post something just dumb or stupid or whatever, I can post it there.
I was going to say the Finsta, but it's not. That's not the right social media. So,
but it's like that.
Yeah, not Spawn Hour. When you're talking about, I mean, I'm just looking at that big banner, Super Bowl 58. Like, it all comes back to the game, right? I'm gonna throw you guys a just very football-oriented question. Who's the better team here coming to the Super Bowl?
I think the Chiefs are the better team, thanks because they have Mahomes. It's not all about the quarterback, but kind of at the end of the day, when you've got a guy who can drop back and a tight end and weapons that are looking to break the structure of football, and that's how the Chiefs play. Like, there's a route that you're supposed to run. The Chiefs don't have to do that, and the Chiefs can just find space, and like somehow Mahomes will find them. And that is so crazy. And I don't think there is any other team in the league who can do the same thing that the Chiefs are able to do. So the 49ers are probably like the more talented football roster. Like, their weapons as a whole are better, their line might be better, or their defensive line might be better, like their secondary is better. But when you start to stack up all the position groups, like the 49ers take some spots, definitely. But I think the Chiefs and Kelsey and Mahomes and Reed, and then you get the Chris Jones aspect on defense, who might be the best defensive player playing in this game. Like, they just know how to win, dude. They just know how to win, and they can play in a way that kind of overcome. It's like a user playing versus a computer almost. Like, they just have
different answers that kind
It's
of break
on.
this.
It's on all Madden. You're supposed to lose, but you make it work. You fit that window. You're not supposed
You just
to.
they're just can find different answers than every other team, and so I think they're
the better team.
I don't disagree with a lot of what you said. It's really close. The spread in this game is probably 2.5 points, 3. It's a tough one. But I think even Patrick Mahomes and even, Travis Kelce and Andy Reid can't completely overcome some of the shortcomings of that offense. They've gotten here when a lot of people, including myself, didn't expect them to.
Me too.
Yeah. But you look at, the Ravens game, and my answer to that isn't necessarily that, okay, well, the Chiefs are just too unbeatable. It's that the Ravens kind of shot themselves in the foot several times, and if they had not fumbled at the goal line, would we be sitting here saying, yeah, the weapons are too limited and the Chiefs didn't score in the second half? I still think, you get down late in the game, yeah, you need a big play, and Mahomes, 40-yard bomb to MVS to seal it. Of course, who else is doing that? But I go position group by position group, and I just think there's maybe one too many weaknesses on this Chiefs team for me to say that they're better than the 49ers.
I think something that's so interesting about the Chiefs, and we've talked about this before on the show, at the beginning of the playoffs, a lot of people didn't think the Chiefs would be able to win a road playoff game. But now that they're in the Super Bowl, it's like a situation of we didn't think we could get here, but now that they are here, they're probably going to win. And the change of perspective is so interesting to me. I was wondering, from you guys' perspective, do you follow that line of thinking of like you didn't expect them to get to the Super Bowl, but now that they're here, there's a good chance they win it? Because I know you think they're going to win it. Did you think they were going to make it to this point at the beginning of the playoffs?
I thought the Ravens were going to beat them, and honestly, it does play into it. Like I thought that it wasn't going to be enough. I thought that the weaknesses were going to stop them before this point, and they didn't. And now it's like, damn. I don't know if I can pick the 49ers anymore because I thought the Eagles were going to beat them last year. I thought they had the more complete roster. And then the 49ers, I remember when I was a freshman at ASU and making picks on college radio down there, like I said, the 49ers are the more complete team even though the Chiefs have Mahomes, and guess what happened there? So I'm very wary against it these days, and maybe I'm just, that minor that's turning back right before he hits the diamond.
That's what I think. Well, I think what it comes down to, man, is like you're like, okay, the Chiefs roster, too many holes, not going to work. I'm betting against Patrick Mahomes. And then now he's here, and people who have done that, like myself, see, 2 times, okay, well, I'm not doing that again no matter what. I'm not being the guy who bet against Patrick Mahomes. But if you take that out of your mind and you're not worried about doing that, you can look back and say, well, there's been times where the team has failed Mahomes and he hasn't been able to do it. I'm not betting against Mahomes. I'm betting against the rest of the team. You see that Tampa Bay Super Bowl. If that's how this one plays out, which I don't necessarily think it will, but if that's how this one played out, you'd look back and be like, yeah, of course. Like, I totally should have been able to see that could have happened. So I understand it's been tough for me. I was picking the Chiefs a lot until yesterday, and I changed my opinion, and now I'm a 49ers guy.
What caused the change?
We were just talking about it on the podcast, and we started really getting down to the weaknesses of the Chiefs' offense. And it's like, man, tackles are bad. Tooney's out. I don't really trust the.
Tooney is either out or playing.
He hasn't practiced, and he won't practice all week, but he might show up and play.
Well, so you're getting an injury there, and it's like that's one of their best offensive players, and they didn't run the ball particularly well against the Ravens. It's just like, man, it's very, very difficult.
It's tough to square away that the Chiefs have not been vertical all year, and also the 49ers close the middle of the field because they have corners. So you're kind of stuck with attacking the perimeter, and that's where the Chiefs are weak, and that is going to be a very difficult thing to overcome. And my genius take is like they'll just, I don't know how.
I think Mahomes will just get it done somehow, some way. It's like, yeah, and you can't really argue with that. Like, I can't be mad at anybody for picking that, man.
It's a legit proposition. Like, he'll just figure it out, right?
Yeah, their defensive secondary is so good that I don't think Purdy is going to pick them apart. So even if Mahomes does struggle, I do think that there is a chance that they can still outscore the 49ers.
One of the things that makes me feel a little bit better about the Chiefs that I was saying before I decided to pick the 49ers is I think they'll probably be a little bit less prone to mistakes. Mahomes, hasn't gotten sacked a lot and hasn't turned the ball over a lot. Purdy is probably a little bit more vulnerable to do that. So you look at, the Ravens game, for example, that's exactly how they won.
Right.
And then with Mahomes, it's like, can he figure it out? Maybe not every drive, but how many times does he need to figure it out before, it can be a win? Can they win this one 21-17? Absolutely. So it's hard to pick against the Chiefs, but I'm sticking to my guns. I'm going with 49ers.
If the Chiefs do launch a successful perimeter attack, right, number 4, Rashee Rice, is going to be a really big part of that. What is it about him, and maybe it's just the effusive personality because he's so fun, but what is it about him that you think allowed him to come in as a rookie and be one of these guys? Now, I understand Kelsey taking attention off the top, not off the top, off of his plate.
Yeah.
Right. That when using a saying goes wrong because it means something in football. But Kelsey takes attention away. Even like the emergence of someone like a fellow Jersey kid like Pacheco helps, right? But what is it about Shee that you think allowed him to just come in and do his thing?
First of all, the athleticism really pops. When they throw him those screens, especially in the red zone, like he just takes off and it looks a little different. Crossing routes over the middle, like his ability to catch him, turn up field and run, he just looks like a freak out there. And he has gotten some of that Kelsey gene where he has repertoire with Mahomes. I was talking with him about the first time he felt like he was able to get into Mahomes' head and like adjust to the defense in a way Mahomes wanted, and he's talking about his first touchdown, like he's supposed to run a basic and he settled down, and he's got that aspect to him with the athleticism. I'd like to see him used a little bit more out on the perimeter in this game potentially, because that's typically not his role, like down the sideline. It's usually over the middle or in the red zone. But if there's a weakness at corner that the 49ers have with Embry Thomas, I'd like to see them try to line up and get him one-on-one and send him up the sideline a few times because he's athletic. The drop issues haven't really reared their ugly heads so far recently, and he's got a little bit of that sense to find the soft spot.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you can look back at some of the moves that the Chiefs have made, and you can tell this is the type of guy that they've been looking for, right?
Yep.
I mean, okay, so a guy who's a spectacular athlete, who's really good with the ball in his hands for that screen game stuff. That's why they traded for Kadarius Toney, and that obviously hasn't worked out, but I feel like Rice has come in and filled that role well for them.
And
it's been
what Juju has done a little bit as well. He's kind of both of those guys. Where's the next one?
Absolutely. Well, one position group, we were talking position groups earlier. One matchup I think that I'd just like to honestly let you guys nerd out about a little is the interior lines. And I'm talking Chiefs O-line, Niners D-line. I was talking to Eric Armstead about it a little bit and how, they've been caught off guard. Like Jameson Williams reverse went for a 40-yard touchdown because they were trying to attack the perimeter, and they did. How do you see things shaking out with the Chiefs' run game going up against this Niners front that's just like more than a front? Like it's like a wall, right? So
I think the Trey Smith on Armstead battle is going to be super interesting. I would imagine that Creed Humphrey might be looking to give, if the backup is out there for Tooney, like him a lot of help. And then Trey Smith and Eric Armstead, I think, would be really evenly matched. Armstead, I was talking to Bo Allen about this, former defensive lineman. Armstead is super tall, likes to hit the arm overs, expose his chest, and then Trey Smith is kind of a shorter, squatter guy who might be able to jam him and give him some issues. The 49ers defensive front is as talented as anybody, but the production hasn't always been there. Like they were able to, get run on against the Packers. They were able to get run on against the 49ers. They play with 4 guys down. They play with their linebackers so far back that the angles and the space is there for the taking if your guys aren't on your A game. So I do think there are going to be looks there for the Chiefs, even though the talent is probably on the 49ers side. I don't know if the 49ers front has been exactly the sum of its parts so far this season. Although it's certainly not it's still an above average defensive line. Like I do think the Chiefs, I think it'll be an even matchup. I don't think
I think what scares me about Tooney being out potentially and the Humphrey double team is like, okay, well then you're going with Bosa and you're going with Chase Young really one-on-one. So I wonder if that leads into, a lot of chip help, a lot of stuff like that to try to mitigate it some. Or if maybe you just trust Patrick Mahomes to deal with that pressure and you hope to they want to go wild one-on-one and really attack the quarterback. But if they don't keep, containment, are you just going to have Mahomes rush out of there and get him frustrated and make him have to think about that type of stuff all game and limit the pressure? He's done amazing at that, all year and his entire career, and he maybe is the best ever at doing that. So I'll be interested to see how that matchup affects the tackle matchups, affects Patrick Mahomes.
One last question from us for you guys. Again, another nerd situation. I thought I'd save these for the end so you guys can just kind of wax poetic however you see fit. Mahomes said something the other day on his Monday night availability that really stood out to me, and it was that he was almost like begrudgingly talking about the benefits of punting. Like it was like a kid discovering salad. He's like, yeah, it's good to flip the field and trust your defense. Like he's like having conniptions while talking about trusting. That guy wants the ball in his hands, but this Chiefs unit is providing him a pillow to lean back on that is kind of supporting him this year, whether it's L'Jarius Sneed, who Chris Jones told me this morning is the big all-pro snub, you look over at Bolton, you look over at the different leaders of this defense from all over. Talk to me about this Chiefs defense, maybe versus especially the last time they went up against the Niners, their Super Bowl runs in general, right? Like this is the Chiefs defense of these runs. Why is that?
It's very exciting that a guy like Mahomes has gotten defenses like this. We've seen great quarterbacks in Brady's era never be able to put it together outside of what he got. So the work that Spags has done, and the fact that he is kind of not getting any head coaching hype and like he will be able to stick around is absolutely huge for Mahomes' legacy and the Chiefs' ability to become a dynasty in these games. They blitz a ton. They're really good at blitzing. They hit them at good. Their timing when to dial it up is good. They attack certain points that need to be attacked. It's not just straight rush 5 and just it's a nickel off the edge. There's stunting involved. It's going after certain players. So the fact that he has that and they tweak the rotations up top and they keep too high, so you're protected up there as well. They've got a pretty good linebackers core. Troy Bolton.
I was just about to say High School Musical.
Nick Bolton has been a huge get for them. I think when you look at a lot of these teams in the Final Four, they're solid at linebacker. Obviously, the Ravens and the 49ers have the best duos probably. And then the Chiefs have
linebacker.
The Chiefs have got a guy as well. So I love what they've been doing on defense. I'm glad Mahomes' career has that. He has some support so he can win all these games. It's huge.
Yeah, I think the strength of their secondary really allows them to be super aggressive with their blitzes, and that's been the big thing for them. And they've also done a good job of adding in personnel that fits what they want to do blitz-wise. Tranquil's been really good this year, getting after a lot of these faster. Like the linebackers they have are a lot quicker, able to get in there. And it's just works super well. They don't give up, a ton of these horrible explosive plays, even though they are aggressive. There's not a lot of defenses that can do that. And that's why, they held the Ravens to 10 points, and they did about as good as you can against Josh Allen.
And they tackle, so if you've got a bunch of people going after the quarterback and it does get completed, it could be a broken tackle and the guy is gone. But that doesn't really happen for Kansas City because all their secondary players bring their guys down. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are talking about the Final Four and what you can pull away. I feel like linebacker is the theme of that this year. Teams that ignored the position, that room, they felt it. Whether it's Miami, the style of play, right, how they prioritize using their line. Like, I feel like even in the NBA, any league, you can look at the 4 or 6 teams left at the end of a season and be like, okay, this was the theme of this year. The teams that did this stood out. Y'all think that's linebackers this year?
I think so. I think the positional value of linebackers and slot players going way up is kind of the theme of this year.
Yeah, just a positional value in general. Yeah, the Lions are probably the team that's not quite as strong at linebacker, but they did invest heavily in the draft, and they also invested in Gibbs at 12.
I was just about to say running back.
I'm not going to.
Didn't have a bad last couple games.
No, he's starting to get into it. But they're certainly not as strong as like the 49ers or the Chiefs or the Ravens. But they invested in other, maybe not as valuable positions like Gibbs at 12, fantastic, or Branch at 34, fantastic. So I think the theme is if you can get guys who are star players and they change the math of how you either attack their defense or how you try to defend their offense, they're going to be good no matter what, they're supposed to be, position-wise.
Guys, thank you so much for taking the time. It means a lot to us. We're fans of the show. Your measly 190,000 followers or however many we're at nowadays. A couple people out there feel the same way as us, that you guys know what you're doing. So it's really great to have had you on the show. We really appreciate the time. Guys, it's been great seeing you out here. Thanks so much.
It's been great being on here.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
From Radio Row in Las Vegas, Nevada, I'm Chris Persianen alongside Julia Moss. We were just joined by 2 of 3 members of the Stay Hot Pod, Theo and Matt. Guys, thanks so much for coming on one more time. Stay tuned with us here on 1-on-1 90.7 FM because we'll be right back with more after this.
What's up, everyone? I'm Julia Moss, one of the hosts of WFUV's women's sports podcasts, All In. Join us each week as we break down everything from the WNBA, women's collegiate sports, the NWSL, and so much more. We're also joined by recurring hosts including Maddie Bamonte, Taylor Masetta, Sam Bohr, and Annabelle Watson. All In is a production of WFUV Sports.
Welcome back to One on One, live from Las Vegas, Radio Row. We're just about done with today's show. It's crazy. This time has absolutely flown by, and I feel like there's a lot of reasons for that. We've gotten to walk around quite a bit, see a lot of things. Man, Radio Row is so fun. I know I speak for all of us when I say that, but let's dive into some miscellaneous topics, if you will. Some things maybe that aren't absolutely right, nailing the head of the Super Bowl itself. But the first thing I want to bring up, guys, apparently the fields are not good in Vegas. There's been rain, which is very atypical for the Las Vegas area, but nonetheless, it's been cold, it's been rainy, and the fields have apparently taken a hit from that. So I want to ask you guys, you know, the teams have been asked about it. They're not making it a big deal, but it seems like kind of like they're not making it a big deal because it would look bad if they did. What do you guys think?
Well, the 49ers had some complaints. Like, there was a leak going out that the conditions of their field weren't exactly great or up to par necessarily. So I think that it is a big deal, especially in this week. You have to have strong practice conditions, and I get that there was rain and a lot of complications that went into it, but at the same time, there has to be better conditions for both these teams, because both these teams are getting prepared for the biggest game of the year. They should have the best state-of-the-art kind of facilities, and if they're not given that, then I think the 49ers, who are the team in question here, have every reason to voice their displeasure.
Yeah, I mean, I'd certainly be frustrated if I'm going into Super Bowl week and there's some sort of mess up with the fields, the practice fields, whether that, whatever the case may be. But I think Julia made a good point in the sense that whether it's a big deal or not, they're not going to let us know.
Yep.
And that's their job. I don't think it'll end up having much of an impact because all the rain is done. So the way that they have the field is that they have a field that's outside and they roll it into the stadium for the game. So it's a natural grass surface. I'm sure that according to the weather forecast, by the time Super Bowl Sunday rolls around, everything should be normalized. Now, it might have impacted the practicing a little bit, but other than that, I don't think it'll be as much of a story as we think. But again, that remains to be seen.
Well, this just sparks the whole turf versus grass thing, and what's the benefits of turf against grass. Now, grass fields provide for a safer condition where it's less prone to injury than turf, but at the same time, when you have inclement weather in the area, like on Tuesday, it's going to harm the grass a little bit and make it tougher to practice or play in. So it's really tough, but now thankfully I think the Niners have had a lighter practice that they were saying at their media session the other day. I think Kyle Shanahan mentioned that there was lighter stuff going on, but then the next day is where you do more of the hardcore like cutting and like really ramping up the workload. So as long as things are good by then, which I think they are given the weather last couple of days, that'll work out, but obviously just not a great way for the Niners to start their week.
It's kind of a frustrating situation, right? Because Allegiant Stadium is indoors. That is a field that is not going to be tampered with whatsoever by the weather because it's, the roof is closed. Having to deal with the outdoor fields on the week of certainly the biggest game of their season, likely 90% for most of these players, the biggest game of their lives, to have to practice. I don't care if they're just walking on the field. It's a week of the Super Bowl. They should be playing in pristine conditions, and whether that means moving the practice to somewhere indoors where they can practice indoors, I don't care what it is. Something should have changed, in my opinion, and of course I'm speaking as somebody who doesn't know any of the inside scoops of how that all works, but you think the week of the Super Bowl, the biggest game of the biggest sport in America, something like this would be avoided.
Wouldn't you think that?
I would think so. But again, I mean,
that would make sense, right?
Right.
Of course. I mean, it would make sense if every stadium had a roof and grass and it all, and everything was perfect. But the NFL doesn't exactly, it doesn't play by those rules. Every stadium has its own sort of unique advantages and disadvantages. And of course, Vegas is still relatively new as a franchise. The Raiders have been around, but in Vegas, right?
Allegiant Stadium hasn't been around for that long.
Right,
the facilities around here as well.
Right, yeah, so a lot of this stuff is still new. This is the first time they've had the Super Bowl here. And for an event like the Super Bowl, like the demands for, you mentioned like pristine, facilities, right? That whole thing doubles and triples when you have two teams from out of town that need this perfect sort of setup. And I don't know if Vegas was necessarily prepared. I mean, clearly they've done a great job with a lot of things, but perhaps I just don't know what else you could have done instead of literally maybe building another facility. But there's only so much you can do. And I will say from the outside, Allegiant Stadium looks awesome. So I think as that of itself, hoping that surface is good, I think it should be a great game day experience. It's just the week leading up to it.
I feel like the Niners can't catch a break. I mean, you remember the situation. They were one of the first teams to play on the new MetLife turf in 2020, I believe it was. And they had suffered a lot of injuries in the game against the Jets. And I don't know, it just feels like a recurring issue where they've had issues with health in the last couple of years. And now they have to deal with this on the week of the Super Bowl. So they just can't catch a break. And a part of me feels bad for them, but at the same time, they're going to just keep pushing through. They're going to get ready to play. And I don't think they're going to chalk it up as any sort of an excuse to anything that happens on the field on Sunday.
I mean, look, this is a city that is not used to being a sports city by any stretch of the imagination. They've gone from kind of nothing to everything pretty quickly and will likely get even more. Well, maybe not likely anymore. The Oakland A's being the Vegas A's is all of a sudden very much up in the air.
All of a sudden, yeah. The mayor of Las Vegas is saying they should find a way to stay in Oakland. And I thought it was pretty dead set that they were going to Vegas.
Right.
Now,
I thought it was a done deal.
Now, I mean, we were talking to someone earlier, and they said, maybe it was Bill Miller who said, maybe it's 70-30 that they go to Vegas now. So it's not 100% locked in anymore. We know that.
But even if they don't, they have the Raiders, they have the Golden Knights, they have the WNBA team, the Aces. So you have those three. Plus, I imagine an NBA expansion franchise. They're going to be two expansion franchises. You know,
they're going to get another sports team.
It's going to be
there.
Seattle and probably Vegas when they get two more teams, whenever that may be. And then a quick point I want to make about the MetLife turf. I think so many Giant Jet fans have just been begging for grass. And what's funny is that for the World Cup, MetLife has to comply with their rules, which is natural grass. So it's so frustrating. Like, if you're going to put in the effort to bring in the natural grass, then, like, why not make that the standard?
100%. And my point with the Vegas getting so many teams all at once is that they're still, I'm sure, trying to catch up with being a sports kind of city, because Vegas was not a sports city for a very long time. So if the worst thing that happens through this Super Bowl experience is that the 49ers practice 1 or 2 days on some rainy fields, I think it's important not to overreact to it. Certainly something that it should be talked about, as we just did, but something that I think if this is the worst thing that happens this week with a new team, first-time Super Bowl host, maybe you're not too upset.
Maybe not. I mean, there's a lot of things that teams have to deal with during the week, but at the same time, you're all leading to Sunday, and I think by the time that the Super Bowl comes around and the time they step on the field, I think this whole thing is all going to be forgotten about, because at the same time, then it's just a game. They got to go play the game, stick to the game plans that they've set up and have stuck to all year, and then just play their brand of football, and the best team is going to come out on top regardless of any circumstance that happens during the week. Whatever happens on the field Sunday, that's what people are going to remember.
Well, that will just about do it for us here from Radio Row in Las Vegas at the Mandalay Bay Convention Center. We will be back again tomorrow, same time, same place, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. for Day 3, one last day here at Radio Row live streaming. Very bittersweet. We've had the time of our lives, excited for one more day. Thank you so much for listening. One on One is a production of WFUV Sports.